Dive into the unknown with Galactic Shadows. If you love chilling tales, cosmic mysteries, and mind-bending stories, hit subscribe and join our journey through the stars. Don't forget to like, comment, and share if you crave more tales from the dark side of the universe. New stories every week. Dare to listen? The Rattlers at Dry Creek. By J.W. The sun hung low over the desert like a tired old eye, the land bleached bone-white under its gaze. The town of Dry Creek sat squat, in the dust, a crooked collection of clapboard buildings and rusting water towers, forgotten by all but the wind. Until they came. They came from the sky, silent and silver, falling like dead stars. No one saw them land, but come morning, old Ed Kershaw's cattle were gone, his barn collapsed in on itself like a busted lung. By noon, the sheriff was missing, his cruiser found burned black at the edge of town, tires melted to the asphalt. The folks in Dry Creek weren't much for panic. They'd seen droughts, dust storms, and men worse than the devil himself. But there was something in the air, heavy and thick like the smell before rain, only it never rained. The air just sat there, waiting. The aliens weren't much to look at. Tall and lean, their skin a dull gray that shimmered like oil when the light hit it wrong. Eyes black as the bottom of a well. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. They just walked into town, and the people scattered like dry leaves before a fire. Bullets didn't do nothing. The men who tried found themselves twisted up, bones snapped like kindling, their bodies left in the street to bake in the sun. It was old Hank Rollins who figured it out. He was out by the creek bed, looking for strays, when he saw one of the things, standing there like a shadow in the heat. And then he heard it, the dry, rattling warning that every man in the desert knows by heart. The rattler slid from under a rock, coiled and ready, its eyes bright in the sun. The alien stepped back, its black eyes wide. The snake struck, fast and sure, sinking its fangs into that gray skin. The thing let out a sound then, high and thin, like wind whistling through a broken window. It staggered, its skin bubbling, and then it collapsed, shriveled up like a bug under a magnifying glass. Hank didn't waste time thinking on it. He rode back to town, his horse kicking up dust like a storm was coming. By nightfall, every rancher in Dry Creek knew. And by dawn, they had a plan. They drove the cattle hard, the ground shaking under 1,000 hooves. The aliens didn't know what to make of it, those black eyes watching the dust cloud rise like the end of the world. But when the cattle came, they ran. Fast. But not fast enough. The men drove them into Widow's Box Canyon, the narrow walls rising up like the jaws of some ancient beast. And waiting there, in the cool shadows, were the rattlesnakes. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Coiled and ready. The cattle stampeded through, blind with fear, but the aliens had nowhere to go. The snakes struck, over and over, their fangs finding that gray flesh, sinking deep. The aliens screamed, a sound that didn't belong in the world, and then they fell, their bodies shriveling, black smoke rising from the wounds. By sundown, it was over. The canyon was quiet, save for the low rattle of the snakes and the distant calls of the men driving their cattle home. But the sky over Dry Creek never quite cleared. A faint shimmer hung there, like the ghosts of those silent invaders watching from some other place. The folks of Dry Creek didn't talk much about what happened. The desert has a way of swallowing stories, same as it swallows men. But sometimes, in the dead heat of summer, when the wind is just right, you can hear it, the dry rattle of the snakes mingling with something else. A sound that don't quite belong. A whisper in the dust, cold and hollow, promising that what came from the sky might one day come again. And this time, they might not fear the snakes.